Today we'll create simple power-up blocks. I drag and drop the block sprite into the scene and rename it to power-up block. Then I create a new script and give it exactly the same name. I open it and start by doing a little bit of cleanup. Then I add the required component attribute to make sure the object will always have the box collider component on it. I add serialized variable of type sprite. It will store the sprite we want to assign to the game object once it is hit by the character. Then second serialized variable that will store the actual power-up we want to instantiate. Then simple private boolean variable that will store the information if the block has been already hit or not. Then I add onCollisionEnterToD method, and then as usual I will try to get the player specific component from the object that initiated the collision. Then I check 3 different conditions. Firstly, I make sure that the block hasn't been hit yet. Then I check if I managed to get the player specific script. Of course, in your case it can be different one, for example player controller or player input. Or you can even get around checking the component by using tags or names. And the last condition is check if the block has been hit from below. When we'll have the actual power-up, this is the place where we'll spawn it. But at this moment we'll only change the sprite on the sprite renderer to the inactive sprite. Accidentally I put the wrong sprite, so I'm changing it to the active one. Then I drag and drop the power-up block script on it. As you see, the box collider has been automatically added, so now I only have to adjust its size. Then I'm setting up the inactive sprite on the script. Let's test it out. Fantastic! Now I drag and drop the power-up sprite. I change its name to Mushroom. I add box collider 2D to it and adjust its size. Then to make it less boring, I'm adding a simple animation. If you would like to learn more about animations, check this tutorial out. First, I change its rotation in the Z-axis to make it move from side to side. Then to make it look a little bit more cartoony, I'll scale it down a little bit in between the rotation keyframes. Now I add the rigid body 2D to it and increase the gravity scale. This will make its movement a little bit more dynamic. Time to add the power-up script. I open it up and do a little bit of cleanup. I add onCollisionEnterToD method. As previously, I check if the object that initiated the collision is player. If so, I destroy the power-up. In this place you should put all the code that should be executed when the player collects the power-up, preferably even before the destroy method is called. When the object is spawned, I want it to shoot up a little bit. In order to achieve that, I add serialized variable of type vector2, which will store the initial velocity. Then I create a private variable for the rigid body. As you may expect, in the start method I grab the rigid body component. Then, even less surprisingly, I assign to its velocity the initial velocity variable. Because the power-up will be spawned behind the block, their colliders will clash. To prevent that, I will disable temporarily the collider on the power-up. Of course, alternatively you could handle that using the physics layers. I created the collider variable, and in the start method I assign to it the collider of the power-up. Then I disabled it. I create a simple coroutine. In this coroutine I wait for a certain time, which of course will be stored in the serialized variable. And then at the end of the start method I start this coroutine. Oh, and of course we cannot forget to re-enable the collider. I assign the power-up script to the mushroom. And to make its collision with ground a little bit more predictable, I freeze its rotation in the Z-axis. Then in the power-up script I set the initial velocity to 0.15 and the collider timer to 1. Now I change both the block and the mushroom to prefabs by dragging them into the project window. Now it's time to add the last bit of the code. In the block script I instantiate the actual power-up at the position of the block's transform and with the default rotation. Now in the power up block script I assign the mushroom as the power up. And we are done. Long live free Ukraine, glory to the heroes, bye bye.